anytime something goes wrong with a group of male musicians, there always seems to be a woman that catches the blame. The most famous occurrence of this is, of course, with the Beatles and artist Yoko Ono, who has for decades been pointed at as the reason for the end of the biggest band of all time.
Call it the Yoko factor.
And in those intervening years, many other women, in real life and on screen, have gotten caught up in the same trope of the evil woman who slides in and breaks up the otherwise happy group.
You are Yokoing the band! But not just the band, you're Yokoing my school, you're Yokoing my house.
But, of course, there's always more to the story. So let's take a deeper look at the true story of Yoko and the Beatles, why the trope has continued to be so pervasive, and how we're finally starting to leave it in the past. Though Yoko Ono is a world-renowned artist who married one of the most famous musicians on the planet, for a long time, being a Yoko has not been seen as a good thing.
You know how John Lennon was better than the rest of the Beatles but didn't realize it until he met Yoko Ono? Well, I'm Jack's Yoko.
You want to be Yoko?
Popular culture held her up as the reason that one of the world's most iconic bands broke apart, because she was desperately luring John Lennon away to do weird art stuff. Many people didn't know anything about her other than that single fact.
You try to split up the band. Me and him are the Beatles, mate, and you're just that yodeling Chinese woman.
Yoko Ono.
Yeah.
She's Japanese.
But when we take a closer look, we can see that the true story is quite different. Yoko Ono was born in Japan in 1933 and took on an interest in art and music from an early age. By her early 20s, she had moved to New York with her family and began getting involved in the burgeoning avant-garde scene there in the 1950s. As a Japanese woman, she often felt isolated and even ostracized in the majority white male scene. But instead of letting them push her out of the art world, she used her art to point a mirror back at them and the conception of art itself. And by the time she first met John in the late 1960s, she had already become a respected artist in her own right. John, Paul, and George actually began playing together as teens, and with the addition of Ringo, by their late 20s had essentially conquered the music industry and the world, becoming the biggest band on the planet. But of course, being in a mega successful band is much different than playing in a garage with your school friends. And so, over the years, between the intense spotlight and just the natural fact of interests and desires changing as you grow through young adulthood, by the late 60s, the cracks in the band had begun to show. Mim Udovich noted in their review of the Beatles anthology, at the time of Abbey Road, their last recording, the Beatles were on such poor terms with one another that before starting it, John was insisting that all of his songs appear on one side and all Paul's on the other. John in particular had become enamored with his new girlfriend and later wife, Yoko. Once they became an item, they were seemingly inseparable.
When John hitched up with Yoko, he said, Yoko is now a part of me.
They were able to complete each other's artistic longings in a way, her bringing him further into the avant-garde world he was so interested in, and he giving her a much larger spotlight on her work.
When Yoko came along, part of her attraction, I think, was the sort of avant-garde side of things. So she showed him another way to be that was very attractive to him.
As Lindsay Solatz wrote for Vulture, after connecting with Lennon, it was easy for other artists to dismiss her as a sellout or a gold digger. But really, Lennon completed her vision, gave her the populist audience she'd long desired. Ono's art came alive when it broke out beyond the avant-garde, because her mission was to awaken the artist in everybody, not just those who were cool enough to know about the latest going-ons in her Chamber Street loft. Even before the band broke up, she constantly received hate in the press, to the point that the pair decided that they had to move continents to escape it. As Tariq Ali noted in a piece for The Guardian in 2010, he wanted to leave Britain because he and Yoko were repulsed by its provincialism and by the tenor of tabloid racism that was directed against her.
John Lennon and his wife Yoko Ono were chased through Selfridges, London's largest department store, by a gang of screaming fans.
Yoko was not, and still is not, a wallflower. She's always been unafraid to put forth her ideas and take part in art. And so this did lead to some times that were grating for the rest of the band, as she began showing up to recording sessions, and once allegedly caused quite a fight when she ate one of George's digestive biscuits.
When John hooked up with Yoko so sort of intensely, that was kind of obvious that there could be no looking back after that.
And these were the kinds of stories about Yoko that the public were most familiar with at the time that the Beatles finally decided to call it quits. Everyone was stunned and upset, and so began looking for someone to blame. Yoko, being an outspoken woman of color, was an easy target.
It's going to be such an incredible sort of comical thing, like in 50 years' time, you know. they broke up because Yoko sat on an M.
Thus began the decades of people blaming her for being the sole reason this iconic band broke apart. It just couldn't be the choice of the men actually in the band making the decision. It had to have been this evil outside force.
I've only ruined one wedding.
Yeah, and Yoko only ruined one Beatles.
Everyone actually involved with the band's dissolution sees things quite differently.
She certainly didn't break the group up. The group was breaking up.
The reality was just that they had all grown up and changed, and their personalities and styles just didn't mesh together the same way they did when they were younger.
We'd kind of done everything we wanted to do, and it was a neat body of work.
Yeah.
So it probably was a good idea.
And if there is a single outside individual who was responsible for the breakup, it seems that it was actually a man. Paul McCartney has opened up about the fact that the person that really started driving the wedge between the group was Alan Klein, who replaced Brian Epstein as their manager after his passing in 1967. Klein wanted a huge cut of the Beatles' assets, and Paul and the others disagreed on how fair that was, leading to a rift.
It was a very difficult time for me personally because I was fighting the other three guys who were my lifelong buddies. I said, no, I want to fight Klein. So, after long soul searching and stuff, I decided I had to do it or he would take everything the Beatles had ever earned and stuff.
But of course, that never stopped many fans and the culture at large from continuing to blame Yoko, to the point that her name became synonymous with the idea of a single person breaking up a group.
Listen, Yoko, I'm the manager of this act and I'm sick of you trying to split them apart.
A trope that has been surprisingly pervasive. Blaming women for men's poor choices is certainly nothing new, but given how monumental the Beatles were in the public consciousness and how out of the blue their breakup seemed, Yoko became the lightning rod for this trope.
You and Yoko here turn music into school. What are you gonna do, start handing out band homework?
People often just don't want to believe that a beloved male star could ever possibly do anything wrong, or make something that they personally don't like. And so when that does happen, they want someone else to blame. And conveniently, they always seem to be able to find a woman nearby to foist the blame onto.
You're gonna make it all fall apart. Like Yoko.
Is a Yoko.
This is also linked to the idea that the woman is only using the man for her own gain. That she's hoping that by pushing him to succeed, she'll reap her own success too.
If you don't put him last on that song, you're not going to use his track.
Oh, I get it. So Yoko Ono here wants to play on the song too.
And this doesn't just happen with bands. Even women who date famous athletes or actors can get the same hate leveled at them. He didn't play a bad game because he played a bad game. It was because his hot girlfriend was up in the stands distracting him with her sitting there peacefully.
And today he has a message he wants everyone to see, especially Jessica Simpson. A message on his electronic billboard reads, Jessica, leave Tony alone until after the Super Bowl.
On screen, so-called Yoko characters usually are deliberately trying to cause problems, and it's played for laughs. Like on 30 Rock when Jenna tries to become the Yoko for the knockoff Wiggles.
Sure, I've dated musicians before, but I've never sexually manipulated one into leaving his band for me, like Yoko Ono and The Beatles.
On The Big Bang Theory, Sheldon's grad student Ramona also plays into this trope, trying to squeeze her way into Sheldon's life and work and block out everyone and everything else. And the show itself lampshades this by playing the Bare Naked Ladies' Be My Yoko Ono over a montage of the pair. Very occasionally, a male character will fall into this trope, leaning into the idea that the duplicity and breaking up of the group is the sole goal, like when Spike tried to splinter the Scooby Gang on Buffy.
When they broke up, everyone blamed Yoko, but the fact is the group split itself apart. She just happened to be there.
We also see examples going in the other direction too, though, where it's made clear that the woman getting the blame isn't actually the problem. On Flight of the Conchords, Jermaine repeatedly accuses Bren's girlfriend Coco of trying to Yoko them.
And also present Coco.
Yoko.
What did you say?
Oh, nothing, just had a bit of a cough.
But it's really the fact that Jermaine is being so hostile and rude that causes Brent to leave, not anything Coco has done. The recent Anne Hathaway, definitely not adapted Harry Styles fanfiction film, The Idea of You, takes a look at this trope from the side of the woman getting hit with the label. Art gallery owner Celine gets tangled up in a whirlwind affair with a much younger boy band member, Hayes. He desires to break off from his boy band and try to make music that will get him taken more seriously as an artist, and is attracted to Celine's more adult, artsy vibe. Once the public, and more specifically Hayes' fans, find out about the pair, hate begins raining down on Celine.
I mean, I didn't know my being happy would piss so many people off.
Oh, right. Did I not warn you?
People hate happy women.
The hate is so intense that the pair have to break off their relationship. The ending of the novel and film differ. In the book, she ignores him until he stops trying to contact her. In the movie, they decide to pause their relationship for 5 years until Celine's daughter is out of school. But the public dislike for a woman perceived to be wedging her way into a beloved band is a central theme throughout both. But unlike so many other instances, here we're allowed to sympathize with the woman receiving the Yoko label, and that's a sign of the larger evolution we've seen societally.
Yoko Ono, really? A very misunderstood artist, and the Beatles would have broken up anyway.
While people do still seem to enjoy getting their Yoko jokes off on occasion,
Hey, don't talk about Yoko that way, man. Because if you do, you're out of the band.
the conversation around Yoko as a person and performer has greatly shifted in recent decades. People have begun to openly acknowledge how ridiculous it was to try to blame one single woman for destroying the band.
There were a lot of people who became angry with you. They needed to blame somebody. I don't think people could judge your work, honestly, for a long time because they had all these other emotions.
And so people have also been able to really take a more honest look at her life and work, and the conversation she has spent her life trying to create through art. Her work was always about being confrontational to some degree, whether that was with the cool kid art world of the avant-garde scene, or America's war in Vietnam, or just society and our perception of art in a more conceptual way.
What are we gonna do?
We're gonna get into the bag.
You and I are going to get into that bag. All right, so we're gonna just take some stuff off right now, okay?
The Yoko myth, and the evolution of the trope that sprung from it, really highlights how important it is to not allow undue blame to be placed on women for men's actions, both because it's unfair, and because it can cause us to miss out on her true story and contributions to the world. That's the take. Click here to watch the video we think you'll love, or here to check out a whole playlist of awesome content. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. And make sure to subscribe to our Patreon for exclusive new videos.